"Release my dad, and I'll make you walk," the girl cried in the middle of the courtroom. Guffaws exploded. A paralyzed judge, a naive child, an innocent father condemned. No one imagined those words would change everything, and that the impossible was about to happen. The silence in the upper chamber of the Crown Court was absolute when Eleanor Smith pushed open the double doors with all her might. The creak resonated like a war cry. 200 pairs of eyes turned towards the entrance, where a girl in a crumpled school uniform and dried tears on her cheeks advanced with determined steps towards the stand. "Order! Order in the court!" Judge Arthur Holloway slammed his gavel against the table, his wheelchair creaking slightly as he leaned forward. His grey eyes, hardened by decades in the courts, fixed on the small intruder. "Who allowed a minor into a hearing?" No one responded. The court bailiffs exchanged confused glances. Eleanor had run so fast that she passed through the metal detector before they could stop her. "My daddy is innocent." Eleanor's voice shattered protocol like a lightning bolt rending the sky. "You all know it, but no one wants to hear the truth." A murmur erupted in the room. Journalists pulled out their cameras. Those in the public gallery began to whisper. In the dock, Dr. Daniel Smith sharply raised his head, his eyes meeting his daughter's. His face was haggard, with a several-day-old beard and dark circles under his eyes, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. "Ellie, no," he whispered desperately, trying to stand but being restrained by the officers guarding the dock. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies immediately rose, adjusting his tie with a theatrical gesture. "Your Honor, this is completely irregular. This child is obstructing legal proceedings. I request she be removed immediately." "And you're a liar." Eleanor turned to the prosecutor, her small finger pointing at him fearlessly. "You know my dad didn't kill anyone. You changed the evidence." The courtroom exploded. The judge's gavel struck once, twice, 3 times. Silence. Bailiffs, remove the minor immediately. 2 security officers advanced towards Eleanor, but she was faster. She ran directly towards the judge's bench, dodging hands that tried to catch her. Her small body slipped between the lawyers' chairs like a determined shadow. "Your Honor, my dad saved lives his entire existence." The words tumbled from her mouth as fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. He was the best surgeon at St. Jude's General Hospital. He operated on children without charging them. He helped everyone. "Child, understand that this is a court of law." Judge Holloway spoke in a controlled but firm voice, his hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair. "Emotions don't change fact. Your father is accused of medical negligence that resulted in a patient's death. The evidence is fabricated." Eleanor finally reached the bench, so close she could see the prominent veins on the judge's hands. "And you know it. Everyone in this court knows it." Dr. Daniel Smith closed his eyes tightly. His daughter was destroying any possibility of a future appeal with that outburst. "Miss Thompson," his defense barrister, nervously stood. "Your Honor, I apologize on behalf of my client. The minor is obviously traumatized by. The minor is telling the truth." An elderly voice rose from the public gallery. A woman with a cane slowly stood up. "I was in that hospital the night of the incident. Dr. Smith did everything humanly possible to save that man. Madam, sit down immediately or you will be removed." The judge ordered, but others began to rise. First 1, then 3, then a dozen people in the gallery. "My son is alive, thanks to Dr. Smith. He operated on my wife without charging us a penny. That man is a hero, not a criminal." The gavel struck furiously. The bailiffs rushed towards the gallery as chaos took over the courtroom. In the midst of the tumult, Eleanor seized the moment. She climbed the steps to the bench before anyone could stop her and planted herself directly in front of Judge Holloway's wheelchair. "Your Honor." Her voice was now lower, but each word cut the air like a sharp knife. "My mum died years ago. My dad is all I have. If you condemn him today, you'll be destroying an innocent family." Arthur Holloway looked at the girl in front of him. For a moment, something flickered in his grey eyes, something that seemed like pain or perhaps recognition, but his face hardened again. "Child, justice is not based on feelings. It's based on facts and evidence. And the evidence against your father is evidence." Eleanor interrupted him, her voice rising again. "Are you talking about evidence when your own son was saved by my father?" The entire court froze. Not a whisper, not a movement. All eyes flew to the judge, whose expression changed drastically. His knuckles turned white as he gripped the armrests. "What? What did you just say?" His voice came out as a hoarse whisper. "Your son, Your Honor." Eleanor pulled a folded paper from her school uniform pocket. "Years ago, when he was small, he had an accident. The doctors said he wouldn't survive, but my dad operated on him for 11 straight hours, without rest, Without giving up, he saved his life. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies paled. Miss Thompson looked at Eleanor with wide eyes, not knowing where the girl had got that information. Dr. Daniel Smith in the dock shook his head, knowing his daughter had crossed a dangerous line. That's irrelevant to this case, the judge stammered, but his voice had lost all authority. I can't what? Eleanor took another step closer. You can't be fair? You can't look at the real evidence? You're sitting there judging the man who gave you back your son, and now you're going to condemn him for something he didn't do? Child, stop now. Judge Holloway raised his hand, his face flushed. You're in contempt of court. Bailiffs. But Eleanor had already gone too far to stop. In her childish mind, there was only one way to make this man understand, one way to break the barrier of indifference that separated the powerful from the helpless. She looked at the wheelchair, she looked into the judge's eyes, and then she uttered the words that would change everything. Release my dad, and I'll make you walk. The silence that followed was absolute, so dense you could cut it with a knife. And then, as if someone had opened a floodgate, gales of laughter erupted throughout the room. The barristers laughed, the journalists laughed, the public laughed. Even the security guards exchanged incredulous smiles. A small girl had just promised to make a man walk who had been paralyzed for years. It was absurd, it was childish, it was impossible. Did you hear her? A journalist whispered to his colleague between laughs. She's going to make the judge walk. This is front-page material. Poor child, she's desperate, a woman in the gallery commented. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies allowed himself a cruel smile. Your Honor, I believe this scene perfectly demonstrates the unstable mental state surrounding the accused's family. I request this be considered in the sentencing. Even Miss Thompson closed her eyes in frustration. Her already weak case had just become a joke in the eyes of the court. But Eleanor didn't back down, didn't cry, didn't lower her gaze. You don't believe me, she said simply, looking directly into Judge Holloway's eyes. You all laugh, but I know something you don't. And what is that, child? The judge asked in a tired voice, his patience exhausted. What is it you know that all of us with years of experience don't? Eleanor leaned forward, so close that only the judge could hear her clearly. I know you can walk. The words fell like a silent bomb. Judge Arthur Holloway's face transformed. The color completely drained from his skin. His hands began to tremble visibly. His eyes widened with a mixture of shock, fear, and something else, something that seemed like pure terror. What did you say? He whispered, his voice barely audible. You can walk, Eleanor repeated, this time loud enough for the nearest barristers to hear, and I can prove it. The court, which moments before had exploded in laughter, now held a deathly silence. Something in the girl's tone, something in the judge's reaction, had completely changed the atmosphere. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies jumped to his feet. Your Honor, this is ridiculous. The child is fabricating baseless accusations. I demand she be removed and prosecuted for contempt. But Judge Holloway didn't respond. He stared fixedly at Eleanor as if seeing a ghost. His lips moved without making a sound. Sweat began to form on his forehead. Your Honor? Miss Thompson dared to speak. Are you all right? Eleanor pulled something else from her pocket, a small, yellowed envelope. She placed it on the judge's desk with steady hands. This, she said in a clear voice, is a letter my dad never wanted to show. He told me patient secrets are sacred, but I'm not a doctor, and my dad is about to go to prison for something he didn't do. The judge looked at the envelope as if it were a venomous snake. He didn't touch it, didn't open it, but everyone in the room could see he recognized that envelope. What is that? The prosecutor demanded, stepping towards the bench. It's the truth, Eleanor replied, turning to face the entire room. My dad has kept this secret for years, but if everyone is going to destroy his life based on lies, then I'm going to save his life by telling the truth. She looked at the judge again, who was now visibly trembling in his wheelchair. That envelope contains medical records that prove your paralysis isn't real. It has the test results my dad did when you begged him to keep it a secret, when you pleaded with him not to say anything. Because silence. The gavel struck with such force that it splintered. Judge Holloway was standing. No, wait. He was still sitting, but his entire body was leaning forward, his neck muscles tense, his eyes bloodshot. Bailiffs, remove this child immediately and confiscate that envelope. But Eleanor was faster. She grabbed the envelope and held it high above her head. If anyone touches me, I'm going to read this aloud for the entire court, for all the press, for the whole country. The bailiffs stopped dead in their tracks. Journalists aimed their cameras frantically. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies looked between the girl and the judge, clearly confused about what on earth was happening. Dr. Daniel Smith from the dock whispered in horror. "Ellie, no, please don't do this." But his daughter had already made her decision. "I'm going to make a deal, Your Honor," she said, with a calm that belied her age. "Release my dad right now. Acknowledge that this trial is a sham, and I'll destroy this envelope. Your secret will die with me. But if you condemn my father today, then the whole world will know the truth about you." The entire court held its breath. This was no longer the trial of Dr. Daniel Smith. This had become something much bigger, something no one had seen coming. Judge Arthur Holloway looked at the girl in front of him, then at the journalists, then at the envelope she held like a weapon. His career, his reputation, his entire life hung by a thread in the hands of a child. You don't understand what you're doing," he whispered, his voice broken. "I understand perfectly," Eleanor replied. "I'm saving my dad, no matter the cost." And in that moment, as cameras captured every second, as the entire court waited with bated breath, Judge Arthur Holloway did something no one expected. He started to cry. Judge Arthur Holloway's tears streamed down his face as the silence in the courtroom became unbearable. They were not discreet tears. They were choked sobs that shook his shoulders, causing his wheelchair to tremble slightly. No one in that room had ever seen a magistrate break down like that. "Your Honor, Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies stammered, completely lost as to how to proceed. "You need a recess." But the judge did not respond. His hands covered his face, fingers pressed against his temples, as if he wanted to stop a pain that came from deep within. Eleanor, still holding the yellowed envelope high, felt a pang of doubt for the first time. "Dad always says patient secrets are sacred," she whispered to herself, but loud enough for the judge to hear. "He told me a doctor should never betray trust, no matter what. But he also taught me that truth is more important than silence when injustice is winning." Dr. Daniel Smith, from the dock, watched his daughter with a mixture of devastating pride and absolute terror. He knew exactly what that envelope contained. He knew the weight of that secret, and he knew that if Eleanor revealed it, she would destroy a man who, despite everything, also had a story to tell. "Ellie," he called, his voice broken. "Darling, please, put that envelope down. This isn't what I want for you, but it's what I want for you, Dad." She turned to him, her own eyes filling with tears. "I won't let you go to prison. I won't lose the only thing I have left in this world." "Perhaps," an elderly voice interrupted from the gallery. It was Nurse Mary Peterson, the same elderly woman who had stood up earlier. Now she slowly walked to the front, leaning on her cane. "Perhaps we all need to hear the whole story before judging anyone." "And who are you?" the prosecutor demanded, clearly unnerved by the total loss of control of the proceedings. "My name is Mary Peterson." The elderly woman reached the railing separating the public from the legal area. "I was a nurse at St. Jude's General Hospital for 40 years. I was present the night all this began, both Dr. Smith's case, and she looked significantly at the judge. Other events some people prefer to forget." Judge Holloway finally lowered his hands from his face. His eyes were red, swollen, but there was something else in them now. Resignation, perhaps, or maybe relief. "Nurse Peterson," his voice came out hoarse. "Please, don't." "What, Your Honor?" The elderly woman interrupted him gently but firmly. "Don't tell the truth? Don't reveal what we've all kept silent about for years? Look around. Look at that brave child who is willing to destroy her own innocence to save her father. Are we really going to allow this circus to continue?" Miss Thompson, the defense barrister, cautiously approached Eleanor. "Sweetheart, give me the envelope. There are legal ways to present evidence without. The legal ways didn't work." Eleanor backed away, protecting the envelope against her chest. "My dad trusted the legal ways. He hired barristers. He presented evidence. He did everything right. And they're still going to condemn him because the evidence against him is very strong." Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies interjected, regaining some composure. "The patient died on the operating table. Medical reports show clear negligence. Dr. Smith made wrong decisions that Dr. Smith made the only possible decisions." Nurse Mary Peterson's voice cut the air like a whip. "That man arrived at the hospital with a massive internal hemorrhage. 3 doctors before Dr. Daniel refused to operate because they knew the chances of survival were almost nil. But Dr. Smith never abandons anyone. The records say otherwise." The prosecutor pulled a thick folder from his briefcase. "Here is the testimony of Dr. Marcus Thorne, a colleague of the accused, who states that Dr. Smith operated against protocol, that he took unnecessary risks, that his ego, Dr. Thorne is a liar." Another voice rose from the gallery. A young man with visible scars on his neck stood up. "My name is Lewis Miller. Years ago, when I was 8, I had a terrible accident. Dr. Thorne said it was too dangerous to operate on me, that it was better to let nature take its course. Do you know what that means? It means let me die. But Dr. Smith didn't agree. He operated on me for 14 hours, and here I am, alive thanks to him. More people began to stand up, one after another. Similar stories filled the courtroom. He operated on my wife when no one else wanted to risk it. He saved my baby when other doctors gave up on her. That man is a hero, not a criminal. The gavel struck weakly. Judge Holloway no longer had the strength to control the room. He watched the parade of testimonies with a defeated expression. "See, Your Honor." Eleanor approached the bench again, the envelope still firmly in her hand. "All these people know who my dad really is, but there's someone else in this room who also knows him very well. Someone who owes him everything." The judge closed his eyes. "Please, child, don't do this. Then you do the right thing." Eleanor placed the envelope on the desk but kept her hand on top. "Tell the truth about my dad. End this unjust trial, and I'll keep your secret forever. It's not that simple." The judge opened his eyes, and for the first time, there was genuine anguish in them. "There are things you don't understand. Reasons why this trial must continue. Reasons." Eleanor tilted her head. "Or threats." The silence that followed was electric. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies visibly paled. Miss Thompson exchanged a quick glance with Nurse Mary Peterson, and Dr. Daniel Smith from the dock felt a piece of the puzzle finally fall into place. "You don't want to condemn my dad," Eleanor said slowly, as if solving a riddle. "Someone is forcing you." "Elia, stop now." Her father tried to stand up, but the bailiffs kept him seated. "Don't go down that path. It's dangerous." "Dangerous for whom?" A new voice boomed from the courtroom doors. Everyone turned to see a tall man, about 50 years old, dressed in an expensive suit, entering with confident steps. His presence filled the room in a way that made people instinctively move aside. "Mr. Edward Sterling?" Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies pronounced the name as if it were poison. "What are you doing here? This is a closed court. I'm a barrister." Edward Sterling smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. "And I have just been retained to represent Dr. Daniel Smith. My first action as his counsel is to submit an application for a mistrial based on evidence of judicial misconduct." Miss Thompson opened her mouth to protest, but Sterling raised a hand. "Miss Thompson, no offense, but you were assigned to this case precisely because your caseload makes you less effective. That wasn't a coincidence. It was planned." "Planned?" Judge Holloway leaned forward. "Mr. Sterling, you are making very serious accusations, without evidence that." "Without evidence?" Sterling pulled a device from his pocket. "I have recordings, conversations between Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies and certain individuals who prefer to remain in the shadows. Conversations where it's discussed exactly how to secure Dr. Smith's conviction, regardless of the truth." The court exploded in murmurs. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies jumped to his feet, his face crimson. "That is absolutely false. I demand that device be confiscated immediately. There's no legal way you have access to private conversations that involve conspiracy to imprison an innocent man." Sterling arched an eyebrow. "You're right, prosecutor. There's no legal way I have this. But here it is, complete with dates, times, and names." Eleanor looked at the newcomer with a mixture of awe and suspicion. "Who are you really? Why are you helping my dad?" Edward Sterling looked directly at her, and for the first time, his expression softened. "Because, little one, your father once saved someone very important to me, someone the doctors had given up on. And because I've spent years waiting for the right moment to repay that debt." "Who?" Eleanor asked. "My daughter," Sterling replied simply. "Years ago, when she was your age, she had a brain aneurysm. Dr. Smith operated on her when 5 different surgeons said it was impossible. Today she's studying medicine because she wants to be like the man who gave her a second chance at life." Tears streamed down Eleanor's cheeks. "So, then there are more people my dad saved?" "Hundreds," Nurse Mary Peterson interjected. "Throughout his career, Dr. Smith has saved hundreds of people other doctors considered lost causes. But that also earned him enemies." "Enemies?" Miss Thompson finally found her voice. "Are you saying this trial is revenge?" "Not just revenge." Sterling walked to the center of the room, his voice projecting so everyone could hear. "It's a message. A message to all doctors who think of putting their patients above profit, to those who reject bribes from pharmaceutical companies, to those who denounce corrupt medical practices. Those are very serious accusations," Judge Holloway said, but his voice lacked conviction. "And I can prove everyone." Sterling placed a briefcase on the defense table. "But first, Your Honor, I need you to make a decision. Are you going to allow the truth to come to light? or are you going to continue to be part of this farce? The judge looked at Sterling, then at Eleanor, who still held the yellowed envelope, then at the dozens of people in the gallery, all looking at him with hope and plea. Finally, his eyes rested on Dr. Daniel Smith. "Dr. Smith," he said slowly, "you saved my son. Years ago, when the best specialist in the country said there was no hope, you found a way. You operated for hours, refusing to rest, refusing to give up." The entire court listened in absolute silence. After that operation, the judge continued, his voice breaking. "You visited me privately. You showed me something. Something you discovered during my son's pre-operative exams. Something about me." Eleanor gripped the envelope tighter. "You told me you had found evidence that my paralysis, the accident that left me in this chair years ago, had inconsistencies. You showed me studies that suggested that with the right treatment, I could walk again." Eleanor completed the sentence. The judge nodded slowly. "But you also explained why I couldn't make it public, why I had to keep that secret. Because if the world found out my paralysis wasn't permanent, that I had been in this chair for reasons that weren't entirely physical, I would lose my job. Your reputation, everything you had built," Edward Sterling said softly. "But that's not all," Nurse Mary Peterson added, her voice trembling. "Is it, Your Honor?" Judge Arthur Holloway closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he had made a decision. "No," he admitted, "it's not all. The truth is that after my accident, I received £1 million compensation from the insurance. A compensation based on the premise that I would never walk again. If the world discovered that wasn't true, I would have to return all that money. Money I had already spent on my son's treatments, on my daughter's education, on supporting my family." "So, Dr. Smith kept your secret," Eleanor said, "to protect your family." "Yes," the judge nodded, "and I swore I would never forget that kindness, that if someday I could help him, I would do so without hesitation, then help him. Now," Eleanor placed the envelope directly in the judge's hands. "Be the man my dad believed you were. Be fair." Arthur Holloway took the envelope with trembling hands. He looked at it for a long moment. Then, before the astonished eyes of everyone in the court, he tore it in half. "This secret," he said with a firm voice, "dies, here and now, not because I'm being blackmailed, not because I'm afraid, but because I understand that some truths are more important than others." He looked directly at Eleanor. "You're right, child. This trial is a sham, and I have been a coward to let it go this far." He turned to Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies, who had been observing everything with growing horror. "Prosecutor, your evidence against Dr. Smith has been questioned by multiple credible witnesses. Your case relies on the testimony of a single doctor whose credibility is now in doubt. And if Mr. Sterling truly has evidence of judicial misconduct, Your Honor, this is absurd," Mr. Davies shouted. "You can't simply dismiss a case because a child put on an emotional spectacle." "The procedural rules exist to serve justice," the judge interrupted him, "not to obstruct it. And now I see clearly that justice is not being served in this court." He raised his gavel. "This trial," he declared, "is suspended indefinitely until a full investigation is conducted into the accusations of judicial misconduct and fabricated evidence." The gavel fell, the sound reverberating like thunder. The court erupted. Journalists rushed towards the exits, shouting into their phones. The public cheered with joy. Crown Prosecutor Mr. Davies threw papers in the air, protesting furiously, and in the midst of the chaos, Eleanor ran towards her father. The bailiffs, confused by the turn of events, did not stop her when she jumped the railing and launched herself into Daniel Smith's arms. He caught her, hugging her so tightly as if he wanted to absorb her into himself. "You did it, my brave girl," he whispered against her hair. "You did it." "No, Dad," she sobbed against his chest. "You did it. You saved the judge. You saved everyone. I just made sure they remembered." But as father and daughter embraced, neither noticed the dark figure watching from the back of the courtroom. A man who had been present throughout the proceedings, taking meticulous notes, recording every word. This trial had been suspended, but the war had just begun, and the forces that had tried to destroy Dr. Daniel Smith would not give up so easily. Night had fallen over the city when Eleanor and her father finally left the courtroom. Journalists awaited them like a hungry pack, cameras flashing, microphones extending like desperate tentacles to capture every word. "Dr. Smith, how do you feel after the trial's suspension?" "Eleanor, is it true you blackmailed the judge?" "Doctor, is there corruption in the judicial system?" Edward Sterling appeared as a shield between them and the press, his imposing presence pushing back the chaos. "No comment," My client will not make any statements until the investigation concludes. A black car waited at the curb. Sterling quickly guided them inside, closing the door just as a journalist tried to shove his microphone in. The vehicle sped off, leaving the media circus behind. Inside the car, Eleanor finally allowed herself to tremble. The adrenaline that had sustained her courage for hours evaporated, leaving her exhausted and frightened. Daniel held her against his chest, feeling the silent sobs she had held back for too long. "It's over, my brave girl," he whispered, kissing her head. "It's really over. Or is it just beginning, Dad?" Eleanor's broken little voice cut through his heart. Daniel exchanged a look with Sterling, who was driving with a grave expression. Both knew the answer, but neither wanted to say it aloud. The car did not head for their home. Instead, Sterling drove them to a discreet building on the outskirts of the city, a place that looked abandoned, but whose windows glowed with faint light from within. "Where are we?" Daniel asked when the vehicle stopped. "Somewhere safe," Sterling replied, turning off the engine. "I need to show you something that will change everything you think you know about this case." They entered through a side door. The interior was surprisingly modern. Computers, multiple screens, metal filing cabinets. It looked like a private investigation office. A young woman, about 30, looked up when they entered. Her hair was pulled back in a high ponytail, and she wore thick-rimmed glasses. On her desk were dozens of photographs, documents, and notes connected with red threads. "Dr. Smith, Eleanor." Sterling made the introductions. "This is Miss Olivia Reed, a private investigator, and the person who has been unraveling this conspiracy for months." "Months?" Daniel frowned. "But I was only accused 8 weeks ago." "Indeed," Olivia completed, adjusting her glasses. "But the conspiracy against you began much earlier, about a year ago." She pointed to one of the screens, where a photograph of an older man appeared. Silver hair, a predatory expression, in an expensive suit. "Do you recognize this man, Dr. Smith?" Daniel studied the image and felt his blood run cold. It's Mr. Alistair Finch, CEO of Phoenix Pharmaceuticals." "Exactly." Olivia touched the keyboard, and more images appeared. "One of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country, and your personal #1 enemy." "I don't understand." Eleanor looked at the photos with confusion. "Why would a medicine man want to hurt my dad?" Olivia knelt to be at the girl's height. "Some time ago, your dad discovered something terrible. Phoenix Pharmaceuticals was selling faulty medicines to public hospitals. Medicines that didn't work properly, but were cheaper to produce. My dad reported it, and they crucified me for it," Daniel added bitterly. "No authority investigated. Instead, they accused me of defamation. I had to publicly retract to avoid losing my medical license." "But you didn't really retract, did you?" Sterling smiled. "You continued to document every case, every patient affected, keeping evidence." "I had to," Daniel defended himself. "Children were dying from fake medicines. I couldn't just ignore it." Olivia returned to her computer. "Alistair Finch found out and decided you were too dangerous to leave free. He needed to silence you permanently, not with physical violence. That would be too obvious. But by destroying your credibility, your career, your life. The patient who died," Eleanor connected the pieces, "the one they said Dad killed. His name was Richard Maxwell." Olivia showed a photo of a middle-aged man. He worked as an accountant for Phoenix Pharmaceuticals. He had discovered financial irregularities related to the defective medicines. He was going to testify against the company. The silence in the room was dense as lead. "Are you saying that Daniel couldn't complete the sentence? That Richard Maxwell didn't die from medical negligence?" Sterling completed. "He was murdered, and they designed everything for you to take the blame." Eleanor felt her legs give way. Daniel held her before she fell, leading her to a nearby chair. The girl's world, which had already been violently shaken, was now completely crumbling. "How?" was all Daniel could ask. Olivia began to explain, her voice technical but charged with contained rage. "Richard Maxwell arrived at St. Jude's General Hospital with an internal hemorrhage. Records show you ordered routine blood tests before the operation, but those tests were manipulated." She displayed documents on the screen. "Someone changed the results to hide that Maxwell had been poisoned with an extremely potent anticoagulant. When you operated on him, it was impossible to stop the bleeding. No matter what you did, the man was already condemned." "My God." Daniel sank into a chair, his face in his hands. "But there's more," Olivia continued relentlessly. "Dr. Marcus Thorne, your colleague who testified against you. What about him?" "He received a £2 million transfer to an offshore account 3 days after Maxwell's death, money from a subsidiary of Phoenix Pharmaceuticals." Eleanor jumped to her feet, her small fists clenched. So that doctor lied. My dad is innocent. Completely, Sterling nodded. But proving this in court will be complicated. Alistair Finch has deep connections, judges, politicians, police, all on his payroll. So, what do we do? Daniel asked, feeling more lost than ever. We fight. A new voice joined the conversation. Everyone turned to see Judge Arthur Holloway entering through the same side door. But this time he wasn't in his wheelchair. He was standing, supported by crutches, walking slowly but deliberately towards them. Eleanor gasped. Daniel jumped up, running towards the judge. What are you doing? Shouldn't you be trying to walk? Holloway completed, finally reaching a chair and sinking into it with an exhausted sigh. Dr. Smith, we both know the truth. You told me years ago. He took off his jacket, revealing arms with clearly developed muscles. My body can walk. The studies you showed me were clear. Regenerated nerves, functional muscles. Physically, I am capable, but mentally, you're a coward, Holloway interrupted. The trauma of the accident, the fear of losing everything if the truth came out, the guilt of lying for years, they built a prison in my mind stronger than any physical paralysis. He looked directly at Eleanor. Until a brave child showed me what courage truly means. It's not the absence of fear, it's doing the right thing despite it. Why are you here? Sterling asked, clearly surprised by the judge's appearance. Because I received this today. Holloway pulled an envelope from his pocket. Inside was a single photograph. It was his son, Andrew, taken that same day, according to the digital date in the corner. Around the boy's head, someone had drawn a target with a red marker. Eleanor felt her blood run cold. Daniel took the photo, his hands trembling with fury. Alistair Finch didn't stop after I suspended the trial, Holloway explained, his voice controlled but charged with hatred. He called me personally. He told me that if I didn't condemn Dr. Smith in the new trial, my family would pay the price. And what did you tell him? Olivia asked. To go to hell, Holloway replied simply. That I'm tired of being his puppet. That this time I'm going to do the right thing, no matter the cost. He stood up again, leaning on the crutches. The effort was visible. Sweat ran down his forehead, but he stood tall. Dr. Smith, you saved my son when no one else wanted to risk it. You taught me that some secrets weigh more than lies. Now I'm going to do the same for you. I'm going to testify about the conspiracy, about the threats, about everything. That will destroy your career, Daniel warned. Perhaps, Holloway nodded, but at least I'll be able to look my son in the eyes without feeling shame. A phone rang, breaking the moment. Olivia answered. She listened briefly, and her face paled. What's wrong? Sterling asked immediately. It was my contact in the police, she said, hanging up with trembling hands. They've just issued an arrest warrant for Dr. Smith. They say he violated the terms of his bail by leaving the city without permission. But I didn't leave the city, Daniel protested. We know, Sterling growled, but Finch doesn't need it to be true. He just needs an excuse to lock you up again. How much time do we have? Holloway asked. Patrol cars are on their way. 15 minutes. Maybe 20. Eleanor felt panic overwhelm her. They had just freed her father, and now they were going to arrest him again. All the sacrifice, all the pain, had been useless. No, she said aloud, surprising herself with the firmness of her tone. We're not going to let them win. Eleanor, darling, Daniel began. No, Dad, she interrupted him, and there was something in her eyes that made everyone in the room pay attention. That bad man thinks he can scare us. He thinks we're weak because we're good. She turned to Olivia. You said you have evidence against him, right? All those photos and papers. Yes, but it's not enough for a criminal case without supporting testimonies. Then let's get testimonies, Eleanor declared. My dad has saved hundreds of people. All those people who stood up in court, all of them can speak. They can tell their stories. That won't stop the arrest warrant, Sterling pointed out, but it can create public pressure. Holloway understood where Eleanor was going. If we expose this publicly, if we make people see that this is a witch hunt, Alistair Finch will have to back down. Olivia completed, her eyes shining with renewed hope. His power relies on operating in the shadows. If we drag him into the light, he'll burn. Sterling smiled dangerously. A plan began to form fast, risky, possibly disastrous, but it was their only chance. Olivia, Sterling took command. I need you to contact every independent journalist you know, the ones not in Finch's pocket. Organize a press conference for early tomorrow morning. Nurse Peterson, Daniel added. She knows all the patients I've treated. She can organize testimonies. I'll contact my colleagues in the judicial system, Holloway offered, the ones who are tired of the corruption. There are more than Finch thinks. And me? Eleanor asked. What can I do? Daniel knelt in front of her, taking her small hands in his. You, my brave girl, are going to do the most difficult thing of all. You're going to trust that the adults finally do things right. And if you can't, tears filled her eyes. And if they take you again, then he kissed her forehead. You already taught me that a child with courage can change the world. I trust you'll find a way to save us again. The sound of sirens began to resonate in the distance. Everyone tensed. We have to move. Sterling pushed Daniel towards a back door. There's a tunnel that leads to the neighboring building. Olivia, destroy any evidence that they were here. Wait. Holloway stopped Daniel with a hand on his shoulder. Doctor, if we don't see each other again, we will see each other again. Daniel interrupted him. And when that happens, I want to see you walking without those crutches. Holloway smiled weakly. It's a deal. Eleanor, Daniel, and Sterling disappeared through the back door just as the sirens became deafening outside. Olivia began to frantically gather documents, putting everything into boxes she would throw out the back window to a waiting van. Judge Arthur Holloway remained alone in the room, listening to the police boots hitting the pavement outside. He stood up again, without the crutches. This time his legs trembled, threatening to collapse, but he stood firm. For my son, he whispered to himself. For all the children who deserve a better world. When the officers burst through the main door, they found only the magistrate standing in an empty room. And for the first time in years, Arthur Holloway did not feel fear. He felt purpose. Somewhere in the city, in a luxurious office on the top floor of a skyscraper, Alistair Finch received the news that Doc Smith had escaped. He smiled. Perfect, he said into the phone. Now he's a fugitive. That makes things much easier. He hung up and dialed another number. Activate Plan B, he ordered. It's time for little Eleanor to learn what happens to those who cross me. The night grew darker, and the real war had just begun. The dawn light was just beginning to filter through the windows of the small flat where Eleanor and her father had taken refuge. It was a modest place in a forgotten neighborhood, provided by one of the patients Daniel had saved years ago. No one would think to look for them there, or so they thought. Eleanor hadn't been able to sleep. Every street noise startled her. Every shadow seemed threatening. She was sitting on the worn sofa, hugging a pillow when she heard her father speaking softly on the phone in the next room. Mary, I need you to trust me, Daniel was saying. Gather everyone you can for the conference. Every patient, every testimony counts. Eleanor quietly got up and approached the half-open door. I know it's dangerous, her father continued. But if we don't act now, Finch will win. And he won't just destroy me, he'll destroy anyone who dares to expose his crimes. He hung up and turned, meeting his daughter's eyes, watching him from the doorway. You couldn't sleep. It wasn't a question. Dad. Eleanor entered the room. What's going to happen to us? Daniel hugged her tightly. We're going to win, my brave girl, because the truth always. The sound of breaking glass exploded from the living room. Both froze. Then voices, heavy footsteps, too many to be regular police officers. The back door, Daniel whispered urgently, pushing Eleanor towards the small balcony. Go down the emergency ladder, run to the cafe on the corner, ask for Mrs. Davies, she'll protect you. I'm not leaving you. Eleanor clung to him. You have to. The urgency in his voice scared her more than anything. If they catch both of us, there'll be no one to tell the truth. Go. The bedroom door burst open. 3 men entered, their faces covered by dark balaclavas. They weren't police, they were something much worse. Dr. Daniel Smith. One of them spoke in a distorted voice. Mr. Finch wants to have a word with you. Let me go. Daniel struggled as they grabbed him, his eyes fixed on Eleanor, who was paralyzed with terror. My daughter has nothing to do with this. On the contrary, another man turned to Eleanor. The child is exactly what we need to ensure your cooperation. Eleanor ran. Her legs carried her to the balcony. As she heard her father scream her name, she descended the metal steps so fast she almost fell. Her bare feet hit the cold metal, tears blurring her vision. She reached the alley and ran. She ran faster than she had ever run in her life. She could hear footsteps behind her, voices yelling for her to stop. The cafe was 2 blocks away, so close, so far. A black car appeared out of nowhere, blocking her way. Eleanor tried to change direction, but strong arms lifted her from the ground. She screamed, kicked, bit, but it was useless. Easy, little one. A familiar voice spoke. Eleanor stopped struggling, looking up in absolute shock. It was Dr. Marcus Thorne. You, she whispered in horror. You lied about my dad. Yes. Thorne placed her in the back seat of the car, but not roughly, with something that almost seemed like guilt. And now I'm going to make amends. The car started. Eleanor pressed herself against the window, watching as the men who were chasing her were left behind. confused. Thorne drove with precision, taking back streets he clearly knew well. "Where are you taking me?" Eleanor demanded, trying to sound brave, though her voice trembled. "Somewhere safe," Thorne replied. "And then you're going to hear something your father never wanted you to know." They drove for 20 minutes until they reached an abandoned hospital on the outskirts. Thorne stopped the car and turned to Eleanor, taking off the glasses he always wore. His eyes were red, tired. 2 years ago, he began without preamble. "My youngest son got sick. Aggressive leukemia. He needed a very expensive experimental drug. I didn't have that money." Eleanor listened in silence, not understanding where this was going. "Alistair Finch came to me," Thorne continued, his voice breaking. "He offered me a deal. He would pay for all my son's treatment if I did what he asked when the time came." "Lie about my dad?" Eleanor completed. "Yes." Thorne nodded miserably. "When Richard Maxwell died, Finch called me. He gave me an exact script of what to say at the trial. That your father had operated negligently, that he had ignored protocols, that his ego caused the death. And you accepted?" Eleanor's voice was full of contempt. "My son was dying." Thorne defended himself, but without conviction. "What would you do to save someone you love?" Eleanor thought about everything she had done for her father, about the envelope she had taken to court, about the threats she had made, and she understood with painful clarity that she and Thorne were not so different. "But they saved your son," she finally said. "No." Thorne shook his head, tears running down his face. "He died 3 months ago. The medicines Finch provided were from the same faulty batch your father tried to expose. My son died because of the same lies I helped protect. The silence in the car was heavy as lead. That's why I'm here." Thorne wiped his face. "That's why I rescued you, because I've lived long enough as a coward. My son deserved a better father, and your father deserves for someone to finally tell the truth." "The truth about what?" Eleanor asked. Thorne pulled a thick envelope from the glove compartment. "Everything is here. Recordings of my conversations with Finch, documents proving Richard Maxwell was poisoned, bank transfers, names of all the doctors, judges, and police on Finch's payroll. Why didn't you hand it over earlier?" "I was afraid," he admitted. "Finch threatened me. He said if I spoke, my family would pay. But then I saw a 10-year-old girl do what I didn't have the courage to do. I saw your bravery in that courtroom, and I was so ashamed of myself that I couldn't keep living with that guilt." He handed the envelope to Eleanor. "Take this to Edward Sterling. He'll know what to do. It's the only copy. If something happens to it, Finch wins. And you?" Eleanor took the envelope with trembling hands. "I'm going to get your father back." Thorne started the car again. "I know where they have him. As long as Finch thinks I'm on his side, I can move freely." "How do I know you're not deceiving me?" Eleanor challenged him. Thorne looked at her through the rearview mirror. "You don't know, but your father once trusted in the goodness of people, even when he shouldn't have. I suppose we're both betting that some of that goodness still exists in this world." He drove her back to the city, but not to the flat. He dropped her off in front of the building where Olivia had her office. Before Eleanor got out, Thorne spoke one last time. "Tell your father I'm sorry, that if I could go back, you can—" Eleanor interrupted him. "You can go back by doing the right thing now." Thorne nodded, a shadow of a sad smile on his face. "You're wiser than many adults I know. Your father must be very proud." The car drove away, leaving Eleanor alone on the pavement with an envelope that contained the fate of all of them. She ran up the stairs and knocked on Olivia's door frantically. Edward Sterling opened it, his expression transforming from surprise to alarm when he saw the girl alone. "Where's your father?" "They took him." Eleanor quickly entered, handing him the envelope. "But we have this, Dr. Thorne." He switched sides. "This has everything we need." Olivia took the envelope and began to examine the contents. Her eyes widened with each document, each recording, each piece of incriminating evidence. "My God," she whispered, This is enough to completely destroy Finch, to lock up dozens of people. It's why they'll kill my dad if they discover it exists," Eleanor completed. Sterling's phone rang. He answered, listened briefly, and his face paled. "It was Arthur Holloway," he said when he hung up. "He just received a message from Finch. If we don't hand over all the evidence and dismantle the press conference within the next 3 hours, they'll kill Dr. Smith." Eleanor felt the world stop. They had won the evidence, but they were about to lose the only thing that mattered. "What do we do?" Olivia asked, looking between Sterling and Eleanor. The girl straightened up, wiping away the tears that had begun to form. In her eyes, there was something new. It wasn't just bravery or desperation. It was absolute determination. "We do both," she said in a firm voice. We save my dad and destroy Finch at the same time. How? Sterling asked. Eleanor smiled. It wasn't a child's smile. It was the smile of someone who had learned to play the adult's game and was ready to win. With the only power Finch can't buy or threaten, she replied, the truth, live for the whole world. And she began to explain a plan so risky, so impossible, that it could only work if everyone played their part perfectly. The clock ticked. 3 hours. The final battle was about to begin. The press room at the convention center was packed. Television cameras, curious journalists who had heard about the conference that promised to reveal the truth about the country's biggest pharmaceutical conspiracy. It was exactly what Eleanor had planned. Maximum public exposure. But what no one knew was that this wasn't just a press conference. It was a trap, and the bait was herself. Are you sure about this? Olivia asked her for the umpteenth time, adjusting the small hidden microphone in Eleanor's blouse. If something goes wrong, then my dad dies anyway. Eleanor replied with a calm she didn't feel. This is our only chance. Edward Sterling nervously checked his watch. Thorne said he'd have Daniel in position at 11 o'clock. It's 10, 4, 5, 1, 5 minutes. And Judge Holloway? Eleanor asked. On his way, Sterling confirmed. But Eleanor, you need to understand something. If Arthur truly tries what you planned, his body might not respond. Psychogenic paralysis doesn't just disappear because you wish it to. It needs an extreme emotional catalyst. I know. Eleanor looked towards the stage where dozens of patients saved by her father were already seated, ready to testify. That's why it's going to work. The doors opened, and Nurse Mary Peterson entered, followed by Judge Arthur Holloway in his wheelchair. But Eleanor noticed something different in him. There was determination in his eyes. Purpose. Already? Holloway asked. Everything, Sterling confirmed. Live broadcasts will begin in exactly 10 minutes. 20 different channels, plus internet streams. Once it starts, there's no turning back. Good, Holloway nodded, because Alistair Finch just confirmed his attendance. The silence that followed was electric. What? Olivia almost shouted. Finch is coming here, personally? I sent him a special invitation. Holloway smiled without humor. I told him if he wanted to stop this conference, he'd have to come and face me face to face. His ego wouldn't let him refuse. That's perfect, Eleanor said, her mind already adjusting the plan. If he's here, he can't hurt my dad. He'll need Dad as a bargaining chip. Exactly, Holloway agreed. But be careful, child. Finch is dangerous when he feels cornered. 10:55. The room was packed to full capacity. Cameras were positioned. Journalists prepared their questions. And somewhere in the crowd, Eleanor knew Finch's men were waiting for orders. 11 o'clock. Edward Sterling went up to the stage. The murmur of the crowd immediately died down. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice resonated through the loudspeakers. Thank you for attending this conference, which will change the way you understand this country's healthcare system. At that moment, the back doors opened. Alistair Finch entered as if he owned the place. Tall, silver-haired, perfectly groomed, a suit that cost more than a new car. His presence demanded attention, but Eleanor noticed something. His eyes frantically searched for something, or someone. We are here, Sterling continued, to expose a conspiracy that has cost innocent lives, to reveal how a pharmaceutical company has manipulated medicines, bribed officials, and murdered those who threatened to expose the truth. Finch stopped in the middle of the aisle. His face remained calm, but Eleanor saw the tension in his shoulders. And to begin, Sterling pointed towards Eleanor. I want to introduce you to the person who had the courage many adults did not. Eleanor Smith. Eleanor walked onto the stage. The cameras turned towards her. Thousands, perhaps millions of people were watching at that moment. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. My name is Eleanor Smith, she began, her voice amplified by the microphones. I am 10 years old, and my dad, Dr. Daniel Smith, is being falsely accused of a crime he didn't commit. In the audience, Finch began to move towards the front. His bodyguards strategically dispersed throughout the room. But I'm not here just to defend him, Eleanor continued. I'm here to accuse the real criminal, the man responsible for the deaths of dozens, perhaps hundreds of people. The man standing right there. She pointed directly at Alistair Finch. The cameras turned violently. Flashes exploded. Finch froze, caught in the spotlight of 20 cameras broadcasting live. Those are very serious accusations, child. Finch spoke with a controlled voice, but Eleanor saw the venom behind the mask. Accusations that could be considered defamation. Defamation? Eleanor pulled a device from her pocket. Even when I have this, it was the USB Dr. Thorne had provided, containing recordings, documents, irrefutable evidence. This, Eleanor held it high, has recordings of you ordering the poisoning of Richard Maxwell. It has bank transfers paying bribes to judges, police, and doctors. It has lists of all the hospitals that received faulty medicines. Everything. The color drained from Finch's face. That's impossible. Such evidence doesn't exist. No, a new voice joined. Doctor. Marcus Thorne came onto the stage, his face projected on giant screens, because I collected it personally. Every conversation I had with you, every instruction you gave me to lie in court, it's all recorded. Finch stepped back, his eyes moving frantically, looking for an exit. And it's not just my word against yours, Thorne continued. 37 more doctors are ready to testify, all bribed by you, all tired of living with that guilt. Furthermore, Judge Arthur Holloway rolled his wheelchair to the front of the stage. I will personally testify about the threats I received to condemn Dr. Smith. Threats against my family, against my son. The room exploded. Journalists shouted questions. Cameras focused on Finch, who was now clearly panicking. This is a circus, he finally screamed. A conspiracy against a successful businessman. You have nothing. We have nothing. Olivia appeared on a side screen via video conference. She began to play a recording. Finch's voice was unmistakable. 2 days after the press conference that rocked the country, Eleanor woke up in a hospital bed. She wasn't injured, but the emotional and physical exhaustion of the past few weeks had finally caught up with her. The doctors insisted she needed rest and observation. Her father slept in a chair beside her, Daniel's hand holding hers, even in dreams. Judge Arthur Holloway was in the next room, undergoing intensive physical therapy. Videos of him standing up had gone viral, viewed more than 50 million times in less than 48 hours. But Eleanor did not feel victorious. She felt something dark approaching. The door opened silently. Edward Sterling entered, his grave expression saying everything before he spoke a word. "We need to talk," he whispered, trying not to wake Daniel. Now, Eleanor slid out of bed carefully. She followed Sterling to the empty hospital corridor, where Miss Olivia Reed waited with a tablet in trembling hands. "What happened?" Eleanor asked, although part of her didn't want to know the answer. "We identified Finch's partner." Olivia turned the tablet. On the screen was a photograph of an older woman, about 60, elegant, with cold eyes that seemed to see through the soul. "Her name is Dr. Eleanor Blackwood." "A doctor?" Eleanor frowned. "She's Finch's boss." "No, not exactly," Sterling explained. "She's much worse. Finch was just the public face. Dr. Eleanor Blackwood is who truly controls Phoenix Pharmaceuticals, and she also controls 3 private hospitals, 2 medical insurers, and has links with politicians at the highest level." "And why wasn't she arrested with Finch?" "Because officially, there's no direct connection between them," Olivia replied. "All the evidence we had pointed to Finch. Eleanor made sure to never leave a trace. Until now," Sterling added darkly, "because after the conference, she got nervous. And nervous people make mistakes." Olivia displayed another image. It was a photograph taken during the press conference, at the back of the room. A thin man, about 40, with dark glasses, meticulously took notes. Eleanor felt her blood run cold. He was in the courtroom. The day it all started, I saw him in the gallery. His name is Paul Evans, Sterling confirmed. He works directly for Eleanor. He's been documenting every move we've made, every person we've spoken to. Why? Eleanor felt a primitive fear crawling up her spine. Because Eleanor doesn't just want revenge. Olivia closed the tablet, unable to keep looking at the images. She wants to send a message that no one, absolutely no one, can expose her and survive to tell the tale. Sterling knelt in front of Eleanor, taking her shoulders gently but firmly. "Eleanor, I need you to listen to me very carefully. This woman is more dangerous than Finch because she's intelligent. She's not going to attack you directly. She's going to do something much worse." "What?" "She's going to destroy everything you love, slowly, systematically, until you wish you'd never started this fight." The words fell like stones into Eleanor's stomach. Your dad is safe here. We have guards at every entrance," Sterling assured. "But there are other people who helped. Nurse Peterson, Dr. Thorne, Judge Holloway, all of them are now targets." As if the universe were confirming his words, Olivia's phone rang. She answered, listened briefly, and her face lost all color. "What?" Sterling demanded. "Nurse Peterson has just been attacked." Olivia hung up with trembling hands. "Someone broke into her house, ransacked everything, left a note." "What did the note say?" Olivia held up the phone, showing a photograph that had been sent to her. The note was written with letters cut from magazines, like in suspense films. "Heroes bleed too," especially the small ones. Eleanor felt her legs give way. Sterling held her before she fell. "We have to get everyone out of here," Olivia said urgently. "Move Daniel, Holloway, Eleanor, to a safe place where no." Eleanor's voice cut through the desperation. "We're not hiding. Eleanor, you're a child. You can't. I'll finish this," she cried, surprising both adults. "I exposed Finch. I convinced the judge. I put all the pieces together, and I'm not going to hide now because a wicked woman wants to scare me." Tears ran down her face, but her voice didn't tremble. "If she wants to scare me, then I'm going to scare her back. I'm going to show her that no matter how powerful she is, she can't beat someone who fights for love." Sterling looked at the girl in front of him and saw something that made him feel simultaneously proud and terrified. He saw someone willing to sacrifice everything. "What do you propose?" he finally asked. "A trap." Eleanor wiped her tears, but this time she's the mouse. In the next room, Judge Arthur Holloway stood in front of a parallel bar, taking trembling but deliberate steps. The physiotherapist encouraged him, but Holloway barely listened. His mind was elsewhere. The door opened, and his eldest son, Andrew Holloway, ran in. He was a 25-year-old man, the same person Dr. Daniel had saved years ago. "Dad," he gasped, "I need to talk to you. It's urgent." Holloway sank into his wheelchair, exhausted but satisfied with his progress. "What's wrong, son?" "I received this today." Andrew held out an envelope. Inside were photographs of him leaving his flat, going to work, having lunch with friends. Each photo had a red X marked over his face. The color drained from Holloway's face. "When did this arrive?" "This morning." "Dad, is there something else? They said if you testify against Finch's organization in the upcoming trial, I'm going to." "No." Holloway interrupted him, his voice broken. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I'm going to." "You're going to retract?" Andrew knelt in front of his father. "After everything that's happened? Dad, listen to me. For years I watched you live in that chair, a prisoner not of your body, but of your fear. And now, when you finally found the courage to stand up, you're going to sit down again. But you're my son. I can't risk." "Dr. Smith saved me when I was 8, Andrew interrupted. "He gave me a second chance at life. And do you know what I did with that chance? I studied medicine. I became a pediatrician. I've saved dozens of children because someone saved me first." Tears ran down Holloway's face. "If we die protecting what is right," Andrew continued, "then we die honoring the life Dr. Smith gave back to me. But if we live as cowards, then he saved me for nothing." Father and son embraced, both crying, both terrified, both determined. At that moment, Eleanor appeared at the door with Sterling and Olivia. "Your Honor," she said with a firm voice, "we need your help once more, but this time it will be more dangerous than ever." That night, in a country estate on the outskirts of the city, Dr. Eleanor Blackwood received reports from Paul Evans. "The threats were delivered," Paul reported. "Nurse Peterson is terrified. The judge's son, too. In 24 hours, everyone will be too scared to testify." "And the child?" Eleanor Blackwood asked, taking a sip of expensive wine. "She's in the hospital, guarded, but vulnerable." "Good." Eleanor Blackwood smiled. "Children are always the weakness of heroes. When Dr. Smith sees what we'll do to his daughter." "Excuse me for interrupting." A new voice joined the conversation. Both turned to see Dr. Marcus Thorne entering through the main door, escorted by security guards. "Dr. Thorne?" Eleanor Blackwood stood up, genuinely surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I've come to make a deal," Thorne replied, his voice tired. "I know you're planning to hurt Eleanor, and I can't allow another child to die because of this organization." "Your son already died, Doctor," Paul said cruelly. "What more can you lose?" "My soul," Thorne replied simply. "I already lost my son. I already lost my honor. But there's one thing I won't lose. The opportunity to do one right thing before I die." Eleanor Blackwood studied him carefully. "What are you proposing?" "Let me take Eleanor out of the hospital. I'll give you a perfect opportunity to do what you have to do. In exchange, you leave Dr. Smith and everyone else alone." "Why would we make that deal?" Paul distrusted him. "We can just take the child whenever we want." "You can't," Thorne smiled bitterly, "because now she has guards, because the media follows her constantly. Any obvious move will be seen. But if I, the man who supposedly saved her, take her out of the hospital saying it's to protect her, no one will suspect." Eleanor Blackwood considered this. "And what do you gain from this deal?" "Peace," Thorne responded. "The peace of knowing that at least I saved one thing in this disaster. Saved the child by making her hand over Dr. Smith. He'll surrender for her, and I'll finally be able to look my son in heaven, without shame." Silence stretched. Finally, Eleanor Blackwood nodded. "All right, Dr. Thorne. You have 24 hours to deliver the child. If you fail, I won't fail. Thorne turned to leave. Tomorrow at midnight, you'll have Eleanor Smith, and this will finally end. When Thorne left the mansion, he walked to his car, legs trembling, sat behind the wheel, and cried for the first time since his son had died. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Sterling," he said when they answered. "I'm in. The plan is in motion." The next day, as the sun set over the city, Eleanor was sitting in her hospital room looking out the window. Her father finally slept after days without proper rest. Judge Holloway practiced walking in the next room, each step a triumph against years of self-imposed imprisonment. And somewhere in that city, good people were preparing to risk everything in a desperate plan to stop a monster. Eleanor touched the window glass, observing her reflection. She saw a 10-year-old girl who had grown up too fast, who had learned things about the world no child should know. But she also saw something else. She saw someone who had discovered that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing the right thing, even when you are terrified. Tomorrow, she whispered to her reflection, this ends one way or another. And in Dr. Eleanor Blackwood's mansion, the doctor looked out her own window, confident in her victory. She didn't know that the trap wasn't for Eleanor. It was for her, and it was about to close. Midnight. The disused warehouse on the outskirts of the city was shrouded in shadows. Eleanor walked hand in hand with Dr. Marcus Thorne, who was supposedly leading her straight into Dr. Eleanor Blackwood's hands, but what no one could see were the 30 federal agents hidden in the upper rafters, the microscopic cameras sewn into Eleanor's clothes, and the snipers positioned in nearby buildings. "Are you scared?" Thorne asked her softly as they approached the warehouse doors. "I'm terrified," Eleanor admitted. "But my dad taught me that fear only wins when we stop doing the right thing." Thorne squeezed her hand. "You're braver than any adult I know." The doors opened. Inside, Dr. Eleanor Blackwood waited with Paul Evans and a dozen guards. The faint warehouse light created dancing shadows that made everything seem like a nightmare. "Dr. Thorne." Eleanor Blackwood smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. "I see you kept your part of the bargain. Here's the child." Thorne gently pushed Eleanor forward. "Now you keep yours. Leave Dr. Smith and everyone else alone." "Of course," Eleanor Blackwood lied softly, approaching Eleanor. "Little one, you've caused a lot of trouble, more than a child should. And you've hurt a lot of people," Eleanor replied, her voice firm despite the terror she felt. "More than anyone should." Eleanor Blackwood crouched down to be at Eleanor's height. "Do you know what happens to girls who don't stay quiet? They become women who change the world," Eleanor replied, looking directly into her eyes. For a moment, something flickered in Eleanor Blackwood's expression, surprise perhaps, or involuntary respect. "A pity," she finally said, standing up. "We could have used someone with your determination in our organization. Paul, take her to the to where exactly?" A new voice resonated through the warehouse. The main lights suddenly came on, temporarily blinding everyone. When their vision cleared, Edward Sterling stood at the main entrance, flanked by federal agents with drawn weapons. "Dr. Eleanor Blackwood," Sterling announced formally, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, trafficking in counterfeit medicines, bribery of public officials, and approximately 37 additional charges." Eleanor Blackwood's face transformed from confidence to fury in an instant. "How? How did you know I would come personally?" Thorne took a step forward, moving away from Eleanor Blackwood's guards. "Because I studied your psychological profile for months. You never entrust dirty work to others. You always want to be present for the final blow. Your ego doesn't allow you to do otherwise." "Traitor." Paul tried to reach for his weapon, but 3 agents tackled him before he could touch it. "I am not a traitor," Thorne said calmly as Paul was handcuffed. "I am a father who lost his son because of this organization, and now I will make sure no other father goes through the same." Eleanor Blackwood tried to back towards a back exit but found her way blocked. Judge Arthur Holloway emerged from the shadows, but not in his wheelchair. He walked slowly with a cane for support, but he walked with restored dignity. "Dr. Blackwood," he said, and his voice carried the weight of years of justice finally being served. "In my capacity as a High Court judge, I will personally ensure that you face every charge, every life you destroyed, every family you ruined. You," Eleanor Blackwood pointed with a trembling finger, "you were paralyzed. How?" "A brave child taught me that the prisons we build in our minds are stronger than any physical cage," Holloway replied, "and that the only path to real freedom is to do the right thing, no matter the cost." Eleanor ran towards him. Holloway extended his free arm, and she took refuge against his side as the agents surrounded Eleanor Blackwood. "This doesn't end here," Eleanor Blackwood hissed as she was handcuffed. "I have lawyers, connections, friends in high places," had Olivia Reed appeared, holding a tablet. "Because in the last 30 minutes, while you were here, federal agents simultaneously arrested 17 corrupt officials on your payroll, including 2 MPs, 5 judges, and the director of the Medicines Regulatory Agency." As Eleanor Blackwood paled, "Because Eleanor didn't just plan to trap you," Sterling explained. "She planned to dismantle your entire network, every name in Thorne's documents, every bank transfer, every recorded conversation. We used it all." "A child," Eleanor Blackwood whispered with absolute incredulity. "A 10-year-old child destroyed me." "No," Eleanor spoke with a clear voice. "Your own evil destroyed you. I just made sure the world saw it." At that moment, the back doors of the warehouse opened. Dr. Daniel Smith ran in. He had been waiting in the command vehicle as part of the plan. When he saw Eleanor safe and sound, his legs almost gave way with relief. "Dad!" Eleanor ran towards him, launching herself into his arms. Daniel caught her, spinning her in the air, tears running freely down his face. "My brave girl, my heroic girl, my little giant. We did it, Dad!" Eleanor sobbed against his neck. "It's over. We're safe now, thanks to you." Daniel lowered her, kneeling to look into her eyes. "Thanks to your courage, your intelligence, your enormous heart that never stopped believing in what was right." Father and daughter, embraced as agents, led a handcuffed Eleanor Blackwood away. Nurse Mary Peterson, who had been coordinating from the command center, entered the warehouse with tears in her eyes. "Dr. Smith," she said, her voice broken, "for 40 years I've seen a lot in hospitals, but I've never seen anything like what this child did for you." "She saved more than my life," Daniel responded, hugging Eleanor tighter. "She saved me from losing." 3 weeks later, the courtroom of the Royal Courts of Justice was packed to capacity, but this time it wasn't to judge Dr. Daniel Smith, it was to honor him. Eleanor was sitting in the front row, dressed in a beautiful dress Nurse Mary Peterson had insisted on buying her. Beside her were Olivia and Sterling. Behind them, dozens of patients Daniel had saved over the years. Judge Arthur Holloway presided over the ceremony. He stood behind the bench, without a cane, without support. He had spent 3 weeks in intensive therapy and could now walk almost without difficulty. Videos of his recovery had become an inspiration to millions of people facing their own battles. "Dr. Daniel Smith," Holloway announced, his voice resonating with restored authority, "for 15 years you have served this community with exemplary dedication. You have saved lives when others refused to take risks. You have defended the vulnerable when others looked away. And you have taught all of us the true meaning of the Hippocratic Oath." Daniel went up to the stand, overwhelmed with emotion. "But more importantly," Holloway continued, "you taught us that true greatness is not in never falling, but in getting up every time we fall. In my case, literally." Gentle laughter filled the room. "Therefore, it is my honor to present you with the Civic Merit Medal, the highest distinction this court can bestow. Dr. Smith, you represent the best of humanity." When Holloway placed the medal around Daniel's neck, the applause was deafening, but Daniel only had eyes for one person. "Your Honor," he said when the applause subsided, "with all due respect, there is someone else who deserves this recognition much more than I do." He turned to Eleanor. "My daughter, who at 10 years old showed more courage than most people show in an entire lifetime, who risked everything to defend what was right, who taught us all that age, doesn't matter when your heart is big enough." Eleanor stood up, her cheeks red with embarrassment as everyone turned to her. "She is my heroine," Daniel continued, his voice breaking. "And if there is justice in this world, someday she will receive the recognition she deserves. I believe, Doctor." Marcus Thorne stood up from his seat. "That day is today." One by one, everyone in the room stood up. The applause began softly, then grew. Then it became an ovation that shook the walls. Eleanor cried openly now, overwhelmed by the love that surrounded her. Nurse Mary Peterson went up to the stand and placed a wreath of fresh flowers on Eleanor's head. "For the bravest child I've ever known," she whispered. That night in the flat, they could finally call home without fear. Daniel tucked Eleanor into her bed. For the first time in weeks, both could sleep without guards at the door, without nightmares lurking. "Dad," Eleanor said as he gave her a goodnight kiss, "do you think the world is a little better now?" Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, stroking her hair. "I think the world is infinitely better because you are in it. Because you reminded us that one person, no matter how small, can change everything when they decide to do the right thing. But was it worth it?" Eleanor asked in a small voice. All the fear, all the pain? Look around you. Daniel pointed to the letters that covered the walls of her room. Letters from grateful people, from saved families, from children inspired by her bravery. Look how many lives you touched. How many people found courage because you found it first. Judge Holloway is walking. Eleanor smiled. Dr. Thorne found his redemption, Daniel added. And you are free. Eleanor hugged him tightly. Because you never gave up. Daniel kissed her forehead. Because you believed in me when no one else did. 6 months later, Eleanor was in her school playground during break time when a smaller girl timidly approached her. Are you her? The girl asked. The girl from the video, the one who made the judge walk. Eleanor smiled. That's me. What's your name? Sophia, she replied. And I want to be brave like you too, but I'm scared. Eleanor knelt to be at Sophia's height. Do you know a secret? I was scared too. I was terrified every day, but I learned something important. What? That courage isn't not being scared. Courage is doing the right thing even when you're trembling with terror. It's standing up for those you love. It's standing firm when it would be easier to give up. Sophia looked at her with wide eyes. Can I be brave like you someday? You can be brave right now. Eleanor extended her hand. Every time you tell the truth, every time you stand up for someone, every time you do the right thing, even when it's hard, that's bravery. Sophia took her hand, smiling for the first time, and in that moment, Eleanor understood that this was what truly mattered. Not the medals, not the recognition, but inspiring the next brave child to find her own voice. In his newly renovated medical practice, Dr. Daniel Smith attended to his last patient of the day. The walls were covered with photographs, recovered patients, reunited families, saved lives. And in the center, framed in gold, was a photo of Eleanor standing in the courtroom, pointing at Alistair Finch, with the caption, "A child changed the world." Judge Arthur Holloway completed his first 5K fun run, crossing the finish line with tears of joy. His son Andrew ran beside him, as did Eleanor, who had insisted on accompanying them. Dr. Marcus Thorne opened a foundation in memory of his son, providing free treatments for children with terminal illnesses. On the inauguration plaque was written, "In honor of all brave children, especially Eleanor Smith, who taught us that redemption is possible." And in a maximum security cell, Dr. Eleanor Blackwood served an 80-year sentence, with no possibility of parole. Alistair Finch was in the next cell, with a similar sentence. But the story didn't end there, because in schools across the country, teachers told the story of Eleanor Smith, the girl who defied a corrupt system, the girl who saved her father, the girl who taught a paralyzed judge how to walk again. And in every classroom, in every playground, in every home, children heard that story and understood something fundamental. That you don't have to be big to make a big difference. That you don't have to be an adult to stand up for what's right. That a small voice, when it speaks the truth, can be more powerful than 1,000 lies. That night, under the stars shining over the city, Eleanor was on her apartment balcony with her father. Months had passed since that Tuesday in court that changed everything. "Dad," she asked, leaning her head against him. "Yes, my brave girl, if you had to go through it all again, would you?" Daniel hugged her tighter. "Every second of pain, every moment of fear, every tear. I would do it all again if it means having this moment with you now. Free, together, victorious. Me too," Eleanor whispered, "because I learned that love always wins. Maybe not immediately, maybe not easily, but in the end, love always wins." And as the stars shone above, father and daughter embraced, knowing they had fought the hardest battle of their lives and had won, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they never stopped believing in the power of doing the right thing. And that, in the end, is the lesson the world needs to remember, that one brave person can change the world, especially when that person is small, determined, and has a heart big enough to love, even when taught to hate.